This is the Enjoyer Podcast. I'm your host, James Dickson.
It's been one hell of a 2024. I read a story this morning, perhaps it was parody, that said men on average are reporting as taller than they used to be on dating sites. Average heights have gone up seemingly overnight. Is this the Trump effect? The doctor quoted in the story says the change in height is fake news, that nothing's happened on the ground to account for this leap in height. Nothing except that extra spring in your step after November 5th. See, it's not that men are actually taller, they're trans tall. They're identifying as taller because their heads are in the clouds. The American man is on the rise, in reality and in his head. My hope is that you listen to this podcast as you drive, or maybe as you do your morning routine. Maybe you're at the gym, or maybe you're cooking breakfast for your family. Wherever you may be listening, however you may be listening, I sure hope that you enjoy this show as much as we enjoy making it. If you do like the Enjoyer Podcast, send it to a friend. Leave a review on Spotify or on YouTube. This podcast doesn't have to be our little secret. At the Michigan Enjoyer, we believe in abundance. We don't hoard the good stuff for ourselves. We enjoy it in the moment, then share it with a generous heart, and maybe make someone else's day. Today, my guest, Jamie Roe, a political consultant in Michigan, will help us understand 2024 and the year that was, and what to expect in 2025. Jamie, thank you so much for joining the Enjoyer Podcast.
Great to be here to close out what has been an absolutely incredible year, and what we're on the verge of 2025, which could bring about dramatic change we've been waiting for a very, very long time.
You sound optimistic about what it could bring.
I'm very optimistic about what it could bring. I think the Trump administration, Trump himself feels like he was elected to bring about change. I think the best thing that happened to him in his 2 terms as president was the 4 years in between, because I think he had a lot of valuable lessons learned in that first term, and how Washington establishment, the machine in Washington, just undercut him at every possible turn. And
Right.
I think that he is ready to take them head on going in with the entire Republican Party behind him, and the a mandate from the American people. So I'm very optimistic that we're going to see dramatic change from in the federal government from this administration.
You know, it's funny because that's exactly kind of how I view it, which is that 2016, it felt like a man against the system. 2024 felt like a movement. And it's like you said, it's because we saw how rotten the uniparty is in between the two. We saw that they will stop at nothing. We saw that no option is off the table, no amount of lawfare, no amount of targeting, the repurposing of our government, the communist revolution, the opening of the border, anything and everything that could have been done to weaken and destabilize America was done. And so what was Donald Trump's real sin? When you saw the guy get shot in the head, I think that was a wake-up call for everybody. What did he say? What did he do exactly to deserve that? And the only thing I could come up with is he won without anyone's permission.
That's exactly the truth. Well, not without anyone's permission, without the permission of the Washington, D.C. establishment
Right.
in that swamp. Trump has talked about the swamp from the get-go,
Yeah.
and he was right. Now, I worked out there for 13 years, right, on Capitol Hill as chief of staff for Candace Miller. And I can tell you this, the swamp is real. It needs to be drained, and it's going to fight like hell to not be drained. And Trump, I think, is almost the only guy capable of leading the effort to get it done. And I think he's got the foot soldiers on his on his side this time, and he's going to have the key people, the right people in place to help him make the difference. And I think I'm just excited to watch and see what happens. Particularly the Doge effort, I think, is going to be very interesting to watch how they dissect and dismantle the federal government. The thing that always amazes me is that, think about being a average blue collar worker in this country who voted for Trump, who works
Right.
like hell to get a decent wage, to try and combat cheap foreign competition or imported labor from across the border,
Mhm.
and all the things that you got to face. And then you have federal government employees, millions of them. Number one, they don't have to go to work, right? They don't have to show up at work every
Right.
day like you do. They get paid above average wages of average American workers.
Oh, and the
They get
benefits, the
they
health
get a
care.
defined benefit pension and a matchable 401k. And you wonder why we're $37 trillion in debt. We have all of these people who we don't require to work, who we pay big salaries, big pensions, big benefits, who don't do anything. And that's about to get dismantled. And, one of the reasons why the 5 richest counties in America are the 5 counties that surround Washington, D.C.
Right.
Ask yourself why that is. And people are sick of it. We out here in the hinterland are sick of it. And Trump is sick of it. And Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy are sick of it and are leading the effort. And I think that they've finally found allies in Congress now who are ready to go along with them. And I think ultimately that effort's going to be bipartisan. Democrats are going to have to get the joke here and find out that the current status quo is no longer sustainable.
Oh, absolutely. Jamie, I'm sure when I described you, a lot of people said, what is a political consultant? Like, we throw around these words like I realized you have to explain what lame duck is and that kind of thing. Like, people aren't just born knowing this stuff. We have to really make sure to explain what we're talking about. So, Jamie, what is a political consultant? How'd you become one?
I started working, I've been involved with Republican politics since the 1990 election. I
Mm,
graduated, I got a degree in political science from Michigan State in 89. That fall of that year, I went to work for the Michigan Republican Party
wow.
and focused, I'm working for, let's just say, at times sub minimum wages with the hours that we put in, working to help get John Engler elected governor in
Right.
1990.
Man, you were in on
And
the ground floor.
dude, 16,500 votes, whatever it was, out of 3+ million cast.
Wow.
If not for that, then I'd likely be selling insurance or something right now.
Right.
But spent 6 years, excuse me, at the Michigan Republican Party, working my way up, and at a time when all we did was win elections because we had such a great leader in
Right.
John Engler, and we had an administration that was built on actual ideas that helped the people. I mean, John Engler was a great governor, best governor in the history of Michigan, as
People
far as
may
I'm
not understand this, but John Engler was also essential to the rise of the Mackinac Center.
yeah,
Because
very
when
much so.
Engler comes into Lansing and he takes the big chair and he wants that policy might behind him, and the government had been run by Democrats for so long, he needed people who could furnish that muscle and who could say that, and provide some of those ideas, or at least move the Overton window in their direction. So Engler really was the tide that lifted all ships for Republicans in Michigan.
He was an incredible leader. He was not only just a conservative, but he was a fighter, and he had been in the legislature, in the House and the Senate, excuse me, for 20 plus years. Senate Majority Leader, won back the Senate Majority
Mm,
for us with the recalls in 1983, and it was just an incredible leader, and brought along with him others who could help him make change. Mackinac Center was key. If you look at where he came from, his district was based in Mount Pleasant, Midland. So Mackinac Center was right there in his district.
right.
So he was a great leader. And excuse me, sorry, battling back from COVID. It's not completely gone yet, but
Absolutely.
anyway, and he brought about real and lasting change in this state.
What is a consultant And how did you become one? Like, I'm sure there's some people, some kid is sitting there, maybe they want to be part of Michigan's Renaissance in 2026, and they're saying, how the heck do I even get started? Like, it seems like it's this very small club. You have to almost know someone to get in it. How does one start down that road?
Well, I think the one way that you get to become a consultant, how I did. First of all, I was a staffer for the party, help good people win elections. We won a lot of elections at the time I was at the Michigan Republican Party. Then you work on campaigns. And after I left the party, I went to work for Candace Miller, preparing for her reelect as Secretary of State in 1998. Okay. Wow. Managed that campaign, and we accomplished something that nobody in the history of Michigan has accomplished. Candace Miller won with 69% of the vote statewide and carried every single county in the state, all 83 counties. Candace Miller carried Wayne County.
That's unheard of.
Unheard of, man. Trust me, I've gone back through election records back to the 19th century and have found no other example of anybody ever had. FDR didn't do it.
That's right? Incredible.
I mean, nobody else has done it. It was an incredible campaign, and we worked hard. I mean, she got, I think it was 30% of the vote in the city of Detroit. And we worked the city of Detroit hard. She was very good friends with Gil Hill back in the day, and we did a lot of events down in Detroit with Gil Hill. But anyway, win elections. I ran her campaign for election to Congress in 2002. Then went to Washington, D.C. with her and spent 13 years with her on Capitol Hill until she decided that she wasn't going to run for re-election and came back home. I actually lived here for most of the time, and I used to commute back and forth to Washington. I'm a Michigan guy, man.
So unlike Alyssa Slotkin, you were living in Michigan this entire time. Okay.
Yeah, I did live in Washington for the first 3 years she was in Congress, so I could figure out how a bill became a law.
Yeah.
And then once I knew that process a little bit better, I wanted to stay in touch with our constituents, and there's no better way to stay in touch with your constituents than to live in the district.
Right.
So I lived here with my family. Plus, it was far more affordable living with two small children than it would be in Washington, D.C. You know, the crazy thing, this is Washington. We lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in Washington, D.C. when our second daughter was coming. And then we moved back to Shelby Township at the time. Brand new construction, 4-bedroom house that our mortgage was less expensive than the rent we paid for a 2-bedroom apartment in Crystal City, Virginia. Absolutely unbelievable how expensive it is out there.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, and then focused on became a consultant and helped. I'm not like one of these huge consulting firms that takes on 1 million different clients. I mean, I know my bandwidth, and I like to focus on helping people who I know and trust and like and know would be good public servants win election to public office so that they can make a change. Right. And I think one of the best things that I'm quite good at is how you communicate with Michigan voters and putting together a message that works and connects with Michigan voters. And that's really where I'm at. And this year, I mean, the number one thing that I was working on was Mike Rogers for Senate campaign. And quite honestly, what really drives me crazy is I don't think we did anything wrong in that campaign and end up coming up 19,000 votes short. It's
worse when it's close.
Oh my God, 19,000 votes out of 5.7 million.
Because you get blown out and you're just like, it's a wave year. It just wasn't our cycle. It just was not to be. Well, when it's that like, close.
Is there one? I mean, think about this. First of all, we knew we had to run close to Trump. right? I mean, so
Right.
we velcroed the message to the same message as Donald Trump. Plus, I mean, they were aligned on the message. And Mike ran closer to Trump than any Senate candidate in America in a contested race.
Mm.
Closer than McCormick in Pennsylvania, closer than Moreno in Ohio, closer than Hobby in Wisconsin, closer than Nevada, Montana, Arizona, any of them, right? Mike ran closer to Trump than anybody. But the fact of the matter is, Trump won those states by more. So if he had won Michigan by a quarter point more, might have been different. Now they also we look at the sort of right leaning third parties, the Libertarians and U.S. Taxpayer Party.
Right.
Combined, their candidates for president got about 30,000 votes. In the Senate race, they got over 100,000 votes.
Oh,
Okay, and we lose by 19,000.
that makes all the difference in the world.
Completely. And I mean, I think that there are a number of reasons for it. Sandy Pencil running the ridiculous ads he ran against Mike in the primary did us no favors in the general. They were just, I think, built a distrust with a certain segment of that part of the electorate that ended up being, Trump.
Now, reading between the lines,
right?
You're invoking the 11th commandment.
What do you mean?
Thou shalt not speak ill of a fellow Republican. That there's a way to do the primary that doesn't cost whoever wins the general.
Well, don't tell BS lies is one good way to avoid doing it. It's Sandy Pencil who violated that rule right off the bat. With just a blatant lie about Mike Rogers. And to achieve no end. That's the thing that gets me. Sandy Pencil had no chance in that primary, and it was nothing productive was going to come out of the ridiculous lies he told about Mike Rogers. Now, and then he turns around and endorses Mike, drops out and endorses Mike before the primary even happens, which makes you wonder if he really believed those ads that he had put on the air in the first place. But that definitely hurt. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and cry all day about it, but we missed an incredible opportunity to elect, first of all, what I think is a great man to serve us in the United States Senate. And secondly, to have another additional foot soldier for President Trump in the Congress, in a chamber where he absolutely needs it. So I don't know. It's just and
the thing that gets me about
stink, man. Sometimes it just stinks.
The thing about that race is just, that Senate seat is a 6-year deal, and so, and that to me is what makes the 2026 so important, because it all sets up for 2030. So that year we got, redistricting, reapportionment. You have a Senate race that Alyssa Slotkin seat's going to be up.
Right.
And so the question is, what would you rather have surround Slotkin on that ballot in 2030? A bunch of Republican incumbents or a bunch of Republican challengers?
Right.
There's one ballot that beats her and there's one ballot that loses to her, which makes 2026 of utmost importance.
2026 is massively important. And it's the governor's race. And, quite honestly, Garrett Peters is up in 2026 as well. And, I hope that somebody like Mike Rogers in particular, comes back and decides to take another shot at it. First of all of the garbage is already out there on the table and has been so bring me something new next time. And I think that he can come back in better funded and able to tell his message in that campaign. But we'll see what happens. I hope he considers it. And then the governor's race, obviously, I mean, the last 8 years or last 6 years, what we've had to deal with, and particularly the last 2 with this Democrat trifecta that's going out whimpering like a baby.
We can't survive much more of what's just happened.
We cannot. We cannot have 2 more years like the last 2 years. And
No.
thank God we're going to have a check on Whitmer and these crazy liberals who've been running the state for the last 6 years are going to have a check on them with Matt Hall and the House Republican majority. But the other race we're going to have to look at in 2026 of vast utmost importance is the Secretary of State race.
Yes.
And I hope to, I mean, I work.
It's essential to win that race.
Amen, man. I mean, if we get a 2-term Secretary of State, what they will do, what they will oversee is the redistricting commission when they meet to draw the maps next time. Because the leadership of this Secretary of State led to the creation of unconstitutional maps, led to basic gerrymander. I just think right now you have gerrymandering enshrined into our Constitution with that initiative. And if there was any way possible to repeal it, I would love to repeal it.
Well, to me, that has to be part of the package of 2026. When I look at these last 20 years in Michigan, candidates don't win. Candidates packaged with ballot initiatives win.
Yeah. I mean, that's the way it's gone. Democrats went that way, and they couple things that got enshrined. First of all, the redistricting commission being enshrined into the Constitution is a problem. I mean, it just is a terrible thing. And I'll tell you what, the biggest losers in the whole thing are the people of Detroit. Completely screwed out.
We have a wider and more liberal legislature than we would have under traditional maps where there'd be more Detroit Democrats.
That's a fact. And you know what you get, what was it? Marshall Bullock gets replaced by Mallory McMorrow.
Right.
Tell me who identifies more with the needs of the people of Detroit, Mallory McMorrow or Marshall Bullock? Okay.
Right.
I mean,
right.
I like to say it's the redistricting commission enshrined suburban white liberal privilege into the Michigan Constitution.
Yes.
And those votes in Detroit were drawn as spaghetti strands out into the suburbs to help elect white suburban liberals.
Right.
I mean, if that's what the people want, I mean, that's what you get right now. I don't think it serves the needs of the people of Detroit well. And I applaud people like former State Rep Sherry Gay.
Sherry Gay has been speaking up
like hell on this.
Yes. Yeah, she's been holding feet to fire. I mean, she's been fearless with it because, you know, her life in politics is not done. So this is not without risk to speak out against the powers that be, and she's still done it. I call Sherry, I've been on Let It Rip with her a few times. I call Sherry kind of the last normal Democrat. That last of the normal Democrats where you could just sit down and have a normal conversation without being accused of some kind of ism right off the bat. You can just talk about issues with them. And it doesn't have to be personal attacks and communist critiques.
Right.
But Jamie,
I have the same relationship with her.
Yeah.
One thing Sherry and I did during the redistricting process when they had these public hearings is that we had common cause on stirring up a citizen revolt at these hearings down in Detroit, because it was just clear with what they were doing that they were not only screwing over Detroit, they're screwing over Macomb County. Take the state Senate district that I live in that was ultimately declared unconstitutional. Went from the precincts in east side of Detroit up through East Point, Roseville, Fraser, Clinton Township, up into Macomb Township. I mean, the guy who lives where I live at 22 in Hayes has very little in common with the guy at let's say 7 Mile and whatever on
very
on
different
the east
communities.
Side of Detroit. Yes, and quite honestly, you need to have one of your own neighbors representing you in Lansing, and this system just treats people. People aren't important. Finding Democrat voting blocks
Bingo.
is the important thing to do, but not people, not communities, and quite honestly, like city lines, school district lines, whatever, meant nothing to that redistricting commission.
Mm-hmm.
They would dissect precincts in order to find the right number of this group or that group that they could piece together to form a Democrat district. And that's why I guess back to the original point of the Secretary of State race and how important it is. Under the guidance of the staff of the Michigan Department of State. And we need to have a solid, conservative, rule of law Republican, quite frankly, in there, because Democrats, whatever the Democrats put up, will just continue what Benson's been doing.
And here's how I would explain that one. It's election night 2028. It's 11 p.m. Has Michigan counted its votes, or is whatever Democrat is replacing Jocelyn Benson sitting up there, taking her third CNN interview of the night, saying, hey, maybe 24 hours from now, we'll have some of this stuff counted? Because in her little mind, she views it as her star moment.
Well, I will tell you one thing that could happen to make certain that the answer to your question is yes, is the Republicans out in Washington, D.C. right now, the Trump administration and Republicans in election reform that they're going to do. Because other things that are going to be on the ballot that day are U.S. Senate race and races for Congress.
Right.
And while states control most of the ballot rules or election rules, the federal government can weigh in when it comes to federal elections. And I suspect that Trump has already said that he is going to require Election Day be a national holiday.
Wow. And
in-person voting and paper ballots. So it is my sincere hope that we can use federal government's control of federal elections to override some of the ridiculous ballot rules that have been put in place that turned into month-long elections, and that needs to change.
Right.
And so I think that there is some chance, and this is one of the things I'm really hopeful about the Trump administration, is that they can get something like that together that will fix our process here in Michigan. The one thing in Republicans, my fellow Republicans need to really consider this right now, is the new election rules, particularly with regard to absentee ballots, where you sign one application one time and get an absentee ballot from now until
for the rest of your life,
20 years after you're dead,
right?
Probably, given how this state manages the voter rolls, is that Democrats kicked our rear ends on absentee voting, and they have got a ton of people out there who have signed forms that will send them a ballot from now until the end of time. And we got to figure out a way to counter that. Now, we killed them on in-person early vote. The addition of in-person early vote was a great thing for us, but that requires you to turn those people out. They don't automatically get that brought to the voting station next time. We have to figure out a way to match this advantage the Democrats are going to have now, because all those people are getting ballots. And the thing is, and we got to think about this not just in terms of the every 2-year elections, but also the city elections, the local elections that take place, because the nature of city electorates, odd number year city electorates, is going to change from this point forward in the state of Michigan. And the main reason why is all those people who voted in 2024 are going to get ballots in the Detroit election in 2025, in the Sterling Heights election in 2025. And that's a decidedly Democrat election.
Jamie, when this year started, Gretchen Whitmer was a rising star. She had a summer memoir on deck, and She kind of timed it just right with that early debate where if Biden were to drop out, here she would be on the rise and on the talk show circuit. But then Biden dropped out kind of late, and Kamala Harris was picked to replace him without any process. Whitmer was relegated to the B team, bars and party buses. Kind of her only notable moment was a Dorito communion video where she managed to piss off 2 million Catholics in Michigan. And now, after it all,
she pissed
Trump
off this,
won
she
Michigan.
Pissed off this Lutheran too.
Yeah,
I'll just tell you.
Yeah, Trump won Michigan, and now Whitmer's going to be a lame duck in Lansing. Jamie, why did Big Gretch have such a tough year in 2024?
Because she made the decision that instead of being a leader, she was going to be a social media influencer, man. I just think it was a tremendous mistake. I mean, she basically abdicated her role as the leader of Michigan to go out there and make that ridiculous Dorito thing with the abortion person. Plus, she decided the only issue that mattered was abortion, and she was going to become the queen of abortion and turn Michigan into the abortion holiday retreat for the entire world, which it's unbelievable how much she just abrogated her responsibility as our governor.
And here's the crazy thing about that, Jamie, is that it's bad idea and it's bad politics. Like, Whitmer didn't just do this to Michigan. She convinced the Biden team and the Harris team that if you just tell everyone abortion's on the ballot, you can be as successful as we just were in 2022. And I remember in the earlier part when they'd replaced Biden with Harris, you saw a lot of those abortion commercials. They didn't move the needle, and then you stopped seeing them. So Whitmer led the national Democrats down a wrong path and then lost her own state.
Yeah, it's just unfathomable to me that given this state of the economy in this state and in this country,
right,
that the Democrats thought that they could win by talking about abortion. You know, and if you look at the numbers, I mean, quite honestly, I'm not a woman, and so I shouldn't speak for them, but I would be offended by the fact that they think that the Democrats believe that I'm defined by one part of my body.
Yes.
And
they think abortion is a magic word that always works on women.
Right. And I think if you look at the numbers, particularly, I mean, Trump won married women.
Right.
Women who were at home concerned about feeding their families, about paying their mortgages, about paying car insurance, about paying, making sure that their kids had opportunity in the future. They voted for Trump. They weren't worried about, just preserving the right to kill babies. Right. I mean, they were concerned about the right of raising their babies and making sure that they had opportunity. And I just don't think that that's going to work again. It's certainly not going to work again here in Michigan because, that was decided in 2022.
They were a victim of their own success.
Right. Oh, and they want to do the same thing.
They took abortion off the ballot. You can't win you won the ultimate abortion battle. Congrats.
Yeah.
And look, that as a conservative, as someone who loves babies, loves life, that's obviously disgusting. And women, if you're listening to this, you should be disgusted that it's been presented that your entire cohort, that nothing is more important to you all than the ability to kill your own offspring. Because that's what they say. Forget abortion, forget reproductive health care. They're saying your biggest issue is your ability to kill your own kid.
Right.
If that's true, you are gross. But it's not true, which means the Democrats are gross, which means that's why they lost, because they're out there on this island, this culture of death they've built, where nothing's more important than killing my own kid. And we also have to get as many violent criminals out of the prisons as possible. Well, we also have to bring in as many illegals as possible. It's just everything they do is against wellness.
And it's not just that, James. I mean, think about this. I mean, how women should be offended. is that the other thing that the Democrats do, I mean, not only can you, go ahead and kill your own babies at will, but also they've decided that men make the best women, and that men should be allowed to compete as women in women's sports and every other thing under the sun. I saw a thing the other day that about the Associated Press Women Athletes of the Year, and they had the Tunisian dude boxer who
Yeah.
won the women's event as the number 3 female athlete of the year. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me.
They finally found the group of men that they're willing to submit to.
Yes, the men pretending to be women are their favorite women on earth. And quite honestly, that issue is another one that brought traditional Democrat voting blocks to Donald Trump. Every time I watch a football game,
yes,
I would see the and as you can tell, I love my Detroit Lions football.
absolutely.
And the Trump campaign was smart in using Kamala Harris's own words about wanting to give illegal immigrants sex change operations for some reason.
Prisoners. I mean, just people,
federal prisoners.
You would never think about. You would never think, man, what does this big man in federal prison, what do they need medically from us?
Right. Yeah. Apparently he needs sex change operation, and you and I got to pay for it. And there were a lot of people watching.
Kamala is for they, them. Trump is for you.
Yeah.
Whenever I my friends who are not in politics, the normies, that seared into their brain. If somebody was on my couch and watching that,
her own words, and that tagline, Trump is, Kamala Harris is for they, them. Trump is for you. Was whoever thought of that the messaging job of the year. But think about all of the groups that appeals to, that were typical Democrat voting blocks that switched sides and came for Trump.
Right.
I mean, look at the numbers in Dearborn. Look at the numbers in Detroit, and in conservative Middle Eastern Christian voting blocks that we have here in Michigan. That just connected with them on such a visceral level. And one thing that I think that we have to do this year, I mean, Republicans have got to do. Trump put together such an incredible coalition. And if we are able to unite that long term and not just get them to vote with us, but to turn out all the time. I mean, there were a lot. I live here in Macomb County. We have a large number of Chaldeans. And let me tell you what, Chaldeans showed up in force in this election.
Right.
And I think it's to be found mainly in the early voting numbers. And I know that they had a early voting location at the Chaldean Foundation in Sterling Heights that moved a lot of people through there to vote. And we have got to find a way to stay connected to these communities, to be present in their major events and participating in their major events, and helping to educate them on how it's important to come out and vote, not just for Trump, which values are on the line in every single election, and getting these people to be regular voters. And I think that we can do it. I'm optimistic about our
it can be done.
ability to do it. Yeah.
I was talking to Dawood Walid, and he basically was saying, Muslims, Arabs, however you want to classify it, are traditional conservative Republican voters. It was only after 9/11 that things changed.
On a values level, I think that that's absolutely true. And I'll go back to John Engler, quite honestly. Back in the 90s. I mean, he worked Lebanese Americans, Chaldean Americans, all these groups with his values, and so many of them are small business owners too, and don't want government intrusion that you get from the left. And I don't know if it was the Arab-Palestinian issue that sort of sidetracked it. 9/11, you mentioned, sidetracked it. But John Engler had done a great job working his way in with those groups, and I think they became loyal John Engler voters for the rest of his career. And George W. Bush in the 2000 campaign made a very strong appeal to those voters, and we have got to figure out a way to stay engaged and turn them into our side. Just show them that on values alone. And I think that, I mean, forget the foreign policy stuff for a second, although I think Trump's going to do a great job there too, and bring peace, which I think is the thing that is needed more than anything. But just take the values message to them, and they will find that they are far more aligned with the Republican Party than they are aligned with the Democrat Party. We don't want dudes in your daughter's locker room.
No.
I can tell you that right now. And
No.
as father of two daughters who played high school sports, let me just tell you, well, fortunately, they were in a conservative Christian school, Lutheran High North, in St. Peter, Macomb, up here in Macomb Township. And let me just say that we were not going to have boys in our daughters' locker rooms at those places. But we have so much to share on the values front and on the economic front, and quite honestly now on the foreign policy front, where I think that we can help make inroads into a great many of these communities that Trump brought on board and seal it in long term. And if that's the case, the Democrats are in big trouble in the state.
You know, you talked about that ad, Kamala is for they, them, Trump is for you. And the interview that Kamala Harris did that was used in that ad was actually from the 2020 Democrat primary.
Right.
She was talking to some trans group, basically, and you could see the interviewer if you look closely.
I think it was the ACLU.
Yeah, I mean, that person was clearly trans who was interviewing her. And basically, to get those votes on the extreme left in California, Kamala Harris had to make herself seem amenable to those people. And so politics, just like on cops, what you say can and will be used against you. And so what you say in 2019 in California looks very different on my couch on a Saturday or Sunday watching football in middle America here in Michigan. I think Mike Duggan was trying to avoid that same scenario. He doesn't want to be made to attest to things that a Democrat candidate for governor might have to, and has decided, hey, independent's the better track. I'm the only guy who will be on the November 2026 ballot. Smart move or too clever by half? Duggan running as independent.
I mean, it's interesting in how it's going to impact the election in 2026. I'm not convinced an independent can win, but I think you're right for the reasons why he did it. Now, how serious he is about it is going to be shown because he's still the mayor of Detroit, right?
Right.
And Tom Homan's going to come in as the border czar on January 20th. And Mike Duggan's going to have an opportunity to work with Tom Homan. He's got a lot. He's going to have some difficult work to do, but he aims to do it. Number one, we're a border town. And number two, I mean, obviously, we're like everywhere else in America. We have our share of illegal immigrants.
Yes.
Now, Mike Duggan's been smart in the last few weeks. He
has
to remind people that Detroit is not a sanctuary city.
Right.
So he is going to have an opportunity to prove that by working with Tom Homan to do the tough work.
To govern in a meaningful way in the middle ground, because he's governed as a Democrat up to now.
He's a Democrat. I mean, he's been a Democrat his entire life. I mean, he came up in the McNamara administration machine in Wayne County Airport, every other darn thing that he's done. Mike Duggan's been a dyed-in-the-wool Democrat from the word go. Now, the interesting thing is the Democrat Party has moved so far to the left that
Right.
maybe they have turned on Mike Duggan. I don't know. Proof's going to be in the pudding for Mike Duggan. What are the issues that he runs on? What are the values that he runs on? And is it going to be enough to overcome? One thing that Democrats, and Mike Duggan as a Democrat, I'm sure he supported it, was the ballot reform that gave us this no reason absentee from now until the end of time.
Right.
Is it also brought straight ticket voting enshrined into the Constitution?
Yes.
And about 40% of the Republican vote is straight ticket voting. About 40% of the Democrat vote is straight ticket voting. So there's 40% of the electorate off the table for you right off the bat.
Just lopped off right off the
Right.
beginning.
Which means that you have to win about 75% of the people who don't vote straight ticket. You got to win those votes in order to achieve victory. And I just don't think that that's possible.
And they say, Mike Duggan had success in the 2013 campaign. He won the primary with write-in votes. That's a single town.
Right.
You're trying to change the vote. You know, they say in a restaurant, don't teach people how to eat.
Right.
No, Mike Duggan essentially has to teach you how to vote.
Yes.
And I just don't see a public education message in a state that struggles with education working.
Maybe it is possible just because people are so sick and tired of the two-party system. I mean, they're sick and tired of both parties. Maybe it is achievable, but it's going to be very expensive to be able to conduct that campaign, and we'll see if he can get it done. But it's another hurdle to be that has
absolutely. And to me, a man can't do it. He almost needs to stand up an independent party and say, this is a new third party in Michigan. So those people who do want an option away from the Democrats or Republicans, now you have a straight ticket option as well.
Or do what Bobby Kennedy did and pick one of the existing third parties in Michigan and join it. But the problem that you have there's nobody who is, I mean, there's very few people who are currently straight ticket U.S. taxpayer party voters.
That's true.
Right? I mean, just
right.
You don't have an existing infrastructure that you can tap into. Yeah, you got a ballot line, but you don't have a ton of voters on that ballot line right now.
Right.
So Duggan's got a lot of hurdles that he needs to overcome. I think I would love to have seen the polling on. I think the only reason he did it was because he determined he couldn't win the Democrat primary. I mean, I think that's a main reason why he did it. And
I think that impression won't help him either. If you are perceived as scared and basically calling yourself a loser through actions,
right?
Does that make me more or less? Like it's the same thing I used to say about Trump. Stop talking about the one you lost.
Right.
Because when you talk about losing, it makes people think of you as a loser.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's well, I mean, Mike Duggan, I mean, he didn't even lose it. Didn't try.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know if he could have. Yeah. I mean, I would have thought he would have been a real contender.
I think he would beat Jocelyn Benson. I just don't think he wants to. Hey, who supports abortion for 6-year-olds? Raise your hand. Who supports sex change? Raise your hand. He doesn't want that.
And I think he could have taken the right position here and stood up to the nonsense. If the Democrats don't get it quickly, that the social extreme left social gender nonsense that they have bought into, that they need to change tone that down just a bit. If they don't get that message, they're doomed to losing from this point forward. People have had enough of that. And if the election of Donald Trump wasn't proof enough of it, their worst nightmare coming true. Well, I mean, they either got to learn the lesson here quickly, or they're going to be drawn to the ash heap of history. And if Duggan is smart enough to carry the message strongly and educate the voters, maybe he's got a shot. But I think a lot of it's going to depend upon what comes on who the candidate is that emerges on our side. And that is going to be interesting to watch here over the next several months as we go into 2025. Is each of these candidates starting to bring their message forward? I'm anxious to see. I'm really not sure which way I'm headed yet. I'm not signed on to help anybody, although
Okay.
I mean that could be subject to change. But
it sounds like you're wanting Rogers to do Senate in 2026.
I sure hope he does. I mean, we came so close this time.
And Roger and Peters only won by what 92,000 votes last time.
I think it was
he ran behind Biden in Michigan. Part of why he was not picked for vice president. Because if you run behind Biden, then what the hell are you doing? So, Jamie, we'll get you out of here on this one. I know you want to get out and watch that Michigan bowl game today.
I could give a crap. I'm a Spartan, man. I don't care. I'm more excited. I'm more worried about next Sunday night.
Spartans watch more Michigan football than Michigan fans watch. Jamie, you briefly considered a run for Michigan GOP chair. You decided against it. As you explained here, you're a child of the party. You cut your teeth on it. So I could see why you would have wanted the job. Why did you decide you didn't want it in the end?
You know what? I'm pretty certain I'd be really good at that job. I'm just not. I just wasn't convinced that I could win the job. Quite honestly, the convention process,
weird process.
It's the toughest precinct you're ever going to have to run in any sort of campaign.
Right.
And I had some people encouraging me to do it, and I looked at it and I talked to a bunch of people, and that get COVID and was out of it for several days. But anyway, just didn't think that it was the right time for me to go for it. It's interesting to see the candidates that we have, and Michon Maddock is in there, and Jim Runstead and Joe Sella, and I know all of them, all three of those guys.
Oh yeah,
very well, and I kind of like them all. They all bring different things to the table, and
they do.
It's going to be interesting.
We're having Michon on Thursday.
What's that?
We're having Michon join us on Thursday.
Yeah, and I saw you already had Joe on, and you've had Runstead on, and I think you're doing a great job in showing people the doing in-depth conversations with all of them. I think is going to be helpful for the delegates who are ultimately going to make this decision. If I thought that I had a good shot at winning, I think I probably would have done it. But I think there's other ways that I can play a role in helping to move this thing forward. I'm real excited to see starting tomorrow how Matt Hall does with the new House Republican.
Oh, that'll be fun.
I'm very optimistic about it.
That'll be fun to watch.
It will be very fun to watch. A check on Whitmer finally, is going to be very good. I think one thing we're going to see is the end of the corporate welfare machine up in Lansing. At least I pray to God that
I sure hope so.
We see that.
Mackinac Center had a great chart about that. My old colleague James Homan, where it was 2000 to now, and auto jobs versus corporate welfare.
Right.
Almost no corporate welfare in the Engler years. Then it rises high during Granholm and stays high throughout Snyder. So Republicans had a chance to crack that consensus, but instead decided we want our names at the top of those press releases. And then Snyder did it so long that Democrats thought that they opposed corporate welfare, which they supported previously, and then they supported again under Democrats and Whitmer. It seems like the Snyder years were a big missed moment to crack that consensus and just introduce reality that politicians create headlines for themselves, not jobs.
Yeah, the difference between Snyder and Engler, and the tax policy, how about just conservative tax policy that benefits everybody, made us more
Right.
attractive job creation location in the 90s under Engler. And Snyder went to a corporate welfare model, which
Mm-hmm.
and Granholm and Whitmer and everybody else, and it's just hurt Michigan desperately. And what we need is to help those who are already here. Would be a good thing to do to succeed and grow. And with conservative tax policy that benefits everybody. Mackinac Center is a great leader. My wife actually did. Our daughter is dyslexic, and public schools failed her terribly. And we did a school choice thing. Best thing we ever did was get our kids out of the public schools and into good Christian education that helped.
School choice is a godsend.
My dyslexic daughter, who was failing in the public schools, graduated from Lutheran High North as a member of the National Honor Society.
Oh my God!
Yes, because they taught her how she needed to be, how she learns, and she thrived in that environment. Now she's thriving. She's actually an Indiana Hoosier now, so I'm officially a Hoosier daddy.
Amen.
And that was the football that the non-Michigan State football I was interested in watching, and it was a little disappointing last week with Indiana and
wasn't much of a game.
Not much of a game. But anyway, we did a piece with the Mackinac Center about my daughter's path, and it is my hope that the next governor of Michigan will really push school choice, and I want every kid in Michigan to have the opportunity to learn where they learn best.
Yes.
And
yes.
I'm a staunch advocate for that, and candidate I'm going to support for governor is going to support school choice. That is one thing that's for sure.
I'm a child of school choice as well. I lied earlier. Well, we'll get you out of here on this one. Just a quick one. You don't have to go super long on it. It sounds like you know and even like all the three candidates for Michigan GOP chair that we know of so far. Let me ask you this, though. What traits do we need in a Michigan GOP party chair?
Somebody who understands that it's not the job of the party chair to set public policy. That is done by the people who are elected by the people to serve in office. It's their number one job is to support the candidates and the elected officials and help them to get elected, and can raise money and has the trust of those who give it. Because guess what? People want to take shots at the donors. We need their money.
Yes.
And we aren't entitled to their money.
No,
right?
They could give nothing to anyone. They don't have to do this.
Stewards. Right.
Yes.
And somebody who can be a steward of and work with donors and grassroots activists to create a system that works. I mean, I've been there and done it under a system that worked greatly. And what we had was great leadership that helped get it done. But who is best equipped to do it? I think I have a idea in mind right now that, Joe Sell is a Macomb guy, and a lot of times we stick together, and I'm interested to see what Joe brings to the table as we go forward. Michonne, I mean, the one thing, and she's loyal to Trump, and she's done
extremely
that well, and she is a activist who's worked like crazy. And quite honestly, she's got a record. I mean, she was the co-chair for Ron Weiser, so people can go back and look at that record and make a judgment for themselves of whether it deserves a career advancement from that. And we'll see what happens as a result of it all. But it's going to be an interesting race to watch as we go forward. And Senator Runstead, I mean, I don't know. He's got a job to do currently, and we'll see if he if people think it's time to give him another job on top of the one that he's got serving in the Michigan Senate. So we'll see how it goes. But one thing I just tell you for the next chair is I'm an asset to, that's ready to get to work.
Yeah.
I'm a Republican precinct. I'm a delegate too. I'm a Republican precinct delegate, and I plan on being a delegate to that convention. So we'll see how it goes.
Absolutely. Jamie, where can people find you online?
First of all, you can find me on X. I think what is my name? At Jamie Roe 23.
I believe so.
20. I know a lot of people don't like people with their numbers. My number there isn't just some random number generated by the system. That's my number when I was a baseball player back in the day, and I always wore 23.
Okay.
So Jamie Roe 23 on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. I'm on all of them. So come check us out, and glad to see it. And I'm just also want to say thank you for having me today. I think it's been a fun conversation. So my dog thinks it was fun too.
It was a great conversation, Jamie. We will definitely have you back in 2025. And man, I can't thank you enough for not only taking the time today. You've been extremely generous with your time. You've helped people understand Michigan politics better, but you're not feeling the best yourself, and you did it anyway. So, Jamie, you're a good friend. You're a man in full, and be blessed.
All right, same to you, James, and thanks for having me. And sorry for the post-COVID cough. It just isn't going away, and I apologize to your listeners and viewers for it, but we battle through it.
That's exactly it. As long as we have breath in our body, we're blessed to be here. So
this unboosted guy survived COVID once again.
Exactly. I think Jamie's just building up his antibodies. Now he's bragging. So
that's what I was saying yesterday. Is now I'm good for the rest of the winter. So
you're loaded for bear. So
yeah, amen. Loaded for bear with COVID antibodies.
All right, I will talk to you very soon, Jamie. Thank you.
All right, let's go and go Lions.